Hey guys, I have someone joining me this week in a few of the stories, so make sure you check him out. There are many unsettling things about being in or working in a morgue, and here are 8 stories to help creep you out even more. Enjoy. My brother is a mortician at a facility in New York, and one night when I was visiting, he asked if I wanted to go to work with him so I wouldn't be alone in his house. Reluctantly, I said yes. What's the worst that could happen, right? Boy, was I wrong. To start off with, this place was creepy as hell, dark, and smelled funny. He said it was normal, and it was probably the smell of the formaldehyde, so I just ignored it. After a little time off chit-chatting and catching up, he told me he needed to get to work, but that I could stay in the little adjoined office and watch some TV, so I did. The entrance to the morgue had swinging doors that you could hear when someone was coming in or out of. He came in to check on me a few times, so I heard the noise. After a few hours of being by myself, I started to doze off when the sudden sound of the doors woke me up. Expecting for my brother to walk in and greet me, there was nothing. Again, I started to fall asleep, and yet again, the loud doors sound went off. You couldn't tell if someone was coming in or out, but they kept on swinging and did not stop. Thinking my brother was playing a joke on me, I got up and went to tell him to stop. But to my surprise, there was only a little girl standing there, playing with the doors, pushing them. "Hi," I told her. She looked at me and didn't say a word. One of the things that caught my eye was a pretty blue dress with a big pink ribbon she was wearing. "Your dress is pretty, and the bow makes it stand out." Again, nothing. She looked down and started to run the opposite way, toward a lonesome hall. I thought the kid belonged to another employee, so I went back to my chair. Hours later, when my brother's shift was over, he finally woke me up to go back to his place. As we were driving, I started to tell him about the doors and the little girl with a cute blue dress and a big pink ribbon. He slammed on the brakes. "What the hell? Why did you brake?" "Tessa," he told me with a chilling look in his eyes. "I just did an autopsy on a little girl that drowned. She was wearing a blue dress with a big pink ribbon." My blood ran cold, and I've never been to work with my brother ever again. At night, it can be a little creepy when you have to go to the morgue. One night, myself and a coworker were taking someone down to the morgue. Now, let me explain. Our morgue is a little freezer box that is in the basement and smells horrible. Plus, it has a ramp to get into it. So she and I wheel the body down there and we push it up the ramp, and then we argue over who is going to push the body in. Of course, I lose, so I swing the freezer door open, push in the body, and slam the door shut. We start to fill out our paperwork when we both look up at each other, and she says to me, "Did you hear that?" I said, "I think so." We both turn and look directly at the door and got cold chills, as the hair on our arms were standing straight up. It sounded like someone was crying out for help from inside the freezer. We both looked at each other and with tremendous fear ran out. Days later, I was telling one of my friends, who was also a nurse on our floor, about the story. She tells me that she has had similar things happen to her in the morgue as well. To this day, I will not go alone, and I try to get out of there as fast as I can.
I used to work in a tissue recovery. My least favorite part was prepping the donor for the recovery process, as it included shaving the arms and legs. Once we had a donor who was very freshly deceased. I held his hand to shave his arm, and his fingers curled around my hand as rigor mortis set in.
My experience was when I first started my embalming career. I had just started my shift and was using a restroom in the back. When I came out, I heard what sounded like a girl sobbing and the sound of feet shuffling around on the floor. The floor was gravelly and had a distinct sound if you scooted your feet on it. The sound was coming from around a corner that led into a small room where we would store embalmed bodies ready to be delivered to their respective funeral homes. I figured someone was upset and crying, so I snuck in, still hearing the sobbing. When I peeked around the corner, the room was empty. No living person in there. I noticed that there was only one body in there as well. A young girl. She shot herself on the side of the head. I wasn't scared per se, but I'm certain you could audibly hear my heart beat. When I get to work, that's all it is to me. Just a job. I've never really had any feelings for the people I've worked on, since that's what I'm there to do, and of course, I don't know them. But this particular day had been embedded in my head ever since. I had done countless autopsies before without a problem, but came the day I was dreading. An autopsy on a child. It was a child no older than a year or so. It was really hard, since I have a child myself. As I worked on him, and I was getting ready to wrap things up, I turned around, and standing right there was a woman, sobbing. I assumed it was the mother, and I told her she couldn't be in there. I asked her how she got in, but no response. She left the room, and a few minutes later, another body came on the stretcher. It was the woman I had just seen. I guess she just wanted to make sure the baby was okay. To this day, no one believes me, but I know what I saw. One of the hardest things I have to do in my line of duty is letting the family members in to identify the bodies. One particular day, I had to let some parents in to identify their son who had passed in a car crash. Their daughter waited outside. The lady could not handle the pain of seeing her son that way, so she broke out, and I told her daughter to take her to the restroom. Not even 5 minutes later, they both came back to tell me that they heard the young man's voice while they were in the stalls. I didn't really know what to say, but I reassured them that he had indeed passed. A few days after the incident, I stayed in my office past midnight, when the lights started to flicker. Ignoring this, I kept working, when I heard a loud, "Help me!" coming from inside one of the freezers. The same freezer where I had put the young man a few days ago. "Help me!" I heard again. "I'm Jacob," the voice said. As astonished as I was to hear this, and yes, the man's name was indeed Jacob, I froze in my tracks and decided to open the door. As I suspected, nothing was there but an empty slab. Blaming this on my lack of sleep, I went back to work, and nothing happened until the following night. I went to the men's room, which is across the hall from the morgue, and while I was doing my business, a loud shriek came from the room, and yet again, "Help me! I'm Jacob!" I came out as fast as I could, and nothing was there. To this day, I wondered what would have happened if I would have asked Jacob what he needed help with.
I was headed home after a long night at work. I was exhausted. It had been a pretty heavy day. I don't know how I managed to get home, but I did. I had worked on a young woman that night. She had caught my attention since she had these beautiful green eyes. That night at my apartment, I kept having dreams about that woman. I don't know why. I kept seeing her running from something or someone, but I couldn't see who it was. After a while of running after her, I finally caught up to her, and I asked what she was running from. She told me, "I'm running from my boyfriend. He wants to kill me." And the last thing I remember was seeing those big green eyes fade away in front of me. When I awoke the next day, the same woman was on my TV screen. They were looking for her boyfriend in connection with her murder. I never really told anyone about my experience, but I will never forget those beautiful green eyes.
At times, your imagination goes wild, especially if this is your first year working at a morgue, and here is my experience. Sure, just like any other person, I enjoy horror movies, but I never thought of them as being real, especially when it comes to the supernatural. There had been a big accident somewhere nearby. I live in a small town, and it was the 3rd month that I had been working there. So being one of the newbies, I had to show I was able to do this. The accident was a pile-up, and there were several bodies at once in the morgue. Since some of them came in as pieces, we had to put them back together like a puzzle. I don't want to get too morbid, so I'll skip ahead. After a while of trying to figure things out, some of the other guys decided to go on a break. I decided to stay since I really didn't know them. I kept working, and I actually thought I saw a forearm with a tattoo move a little bit. I thought to myself that it was just my imagination, so I kept working. Next thing I know, I saw it move again. I decided to hell with it and kept looking at it, but nothing happened. I actually felt silly. I saw it move for a 3rd time, and this time, it really did move. Right there in front of my eyes. But how can this be possible? My coworkers busted through the doors, and I didn't say anything, Sometime later, one of them approached me and told me, "Hey man, you got it wrong." I got what wrong? That piece. That arm. It doesn't belong to that body. What? See, this forearm goes over there. It belongs to that body. I had actually made the mistake of misplacing the parts, and I guess, I know it's silly to say this, but maybe the arm was trying to tell me something. There's a fine line between worlds, and many people are non-believers of the paranormal and of those who experience it. But even a non-believer would be forced to question the reality of a spiritual existence once one has made itself known to them. What about you? Have you experienced anything like this? Let me know by contacting me through any of my social media links, or by leaving a comment here. See you next time.